What are the benefits of fat burning?
We'll get the opinion of the doctor who served as the director and nutrition consultant to the Los Angeles Lakers.
She is Dr. Kate Shanahan, a noted speaker throughout the country, who recently joined the Western Connecticut Medical Group. She'll be with us next. Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Mazer.
And I'm Dr. Andrea Peterson.
We're joined today by Dr. Kate Shanahan, a family physician, but also more a nutritionist who's interested in fat metabolism, has a really interesting perspective, so we're really glad to have you here.
Welcome.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
You want to start off by telling us how you got interested in fat metabolism and nutrition?
Yeah, so it was when I was living on Kauai, Hawaii. I had always wanted to really understand what is the difference between people's health. Why are some people so healthy and some people so
Hawaii
unhealthy?
has the longest lifespan of any state in the country.
It does by like 2 years, which is leaps and bounds.
Wow.
Because the second in that running there is Minnesota, and then behind them I don't remember, but it's like by 2 weeks or something.
It doesn't seem fair though. Not only do they have the most beautiful place to live, but they live the longest there to enjoy it. That's not fair.
Well, there's a connection because what they do is that they love the outdoors. They spend time outdoors, and they're gardening, and they're hunting, and they're fishing, and they're getting their own food. And I found that was really the key. That people who source their own food, and then the other key is preparing it according to family time-tested recipes. Because the people who did that were universally the healthiest as they aged, and in many cases they were healthier than their own children and grandchildren, which was bizarre to me. You know, as a doctor, we don't expect to see the 65-year-old being on fewer medications than the teenager.
And I was going to ask, tell us a little bit more about what you mean by healthier. Absence of chronic conditions, fewer acute problems, or all of the above?
All the above. I mean, these people were dynamos. They would be, so the plantations had just closed, and one of the main sources of employment was the hotel industry. So they would be working in the hotels in the housekeeping, which is, that's hard work for somebody in their 60s, right? They're bending, they're lifting up heavy latex mattresses, good quality, nothing but the best there, scrubbing the pots and pans in the kitchens, 14 condos a day, full-on labor. And then they'd come home and they'd have energy to burn. Literally, like some of them said, well, then I do my exercise video, and then I cook for my family. And it was just like, wow, how does someone have so much energy? And then, in the younger generation, that wasn't the case, to the extent that I had conversations with the human resources director who said that it seems like the younger generation they just don't have the same. He was saying it was the work ethic, but as a doctor, I was seeing it as their physiology. They just couldn't do it. They weren't as sturdy. And a lot of it I tied to the fact that over time, generations of you lose the traditional diet, you lose your genetic integrity in your health.
Now, so you felt that the diet was driving this additional energy, that the diet and the way they ate,
yes,
was driving the additional energy that the older people had.
Yes.
That was not being met. Did they actually, when you spoke to these families, were the younger people eating substantively differently than their elders?
Yeah, they were. Because what happens is that the traditions, if they're not like valued, or if someone in the family gets unfortunately, advice from either with the medical system, or they just look online, right? And they just like, oh, a healthy diet. Oh, that means no butter, no eggs, no liver, no bone stock, that's not important. Fermented foods, too much salt, we can't have that. Bone broth, also too much salt, not important. And so they stop doing these things, and they just go back with the standard white bread and bland tasting vegetables and skinless, boneless chicken, and the food isn't good, it doesn't satisfy, and then you want dessert. So you develop a sweet tooth, and it's all easier and more convenient than growing it yourself, fishing yourself, hunting, all the things that were built into the culture of Hawaii, particularly because until the 70s, many houses didn't even have refrigeration. So electricity.
Now we have a graphic that I've pulled off your website talking about the different quality fats and oils. Could you go through that with us and why some fell into the bad fat and some fell into the good fat.
Yeah, so nature does not make bad fats. So on the left side, we'll see the good fats that you'll recognize because not only have you had them probably, hopefully, but you know what they taste like olive oil, it tastes like olives, and peanut oil tastes like peanut, butter tastes like butter. But on the opposite end of the spectrum are the bad fats.
Yeah, that's what I eat most of on the right side there.
Oh dear.
Especially, I was very disappointed to see the artificial butter, which I thought was really good for me on the right.
It's sad, but you know, it's not just you. It's the statistics show that the average American gets somewhere between 30 and as much as 50% of calories from these oils. So they are not insignificant. And so it's things that don't have flavor: canola, cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, corn oil. So you know, those things don't have a taste.
And what makes the bad, though, from a nutritional standpoint? I mean, I understand one is more natural than the other. I understand there may be some molecular differences between them, but what makes them bad in terms of our health?
In terms of your health, we're just discovering that they promote something called oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is the reason cigarettes are bad for us. It ages us. It's like liquid age. So when you eat these oils, they affect all of your body with this oxidative stress, and they accelerate aging, they degenerate your tissues. Cigarette smoking is bad, but cigarettes, you inhale, they affect your lungs, they affect your arteries in a very negative way, and they cause a few cancers. But this stuff is worse because it becomes every part of your body. And so it blocks your fat burn, it causes inflammation in your skin. I can see it when people who have like psoriasis or eczema, when they get these oils out of their diet, you can see their skin getting clearer. It takes about 3 to 6 months. They can feel it because it blocks their fat burn. And if you can't burn fat, you're hungry between meals. You have to eat more, and you don't have energy because fat we store for energy.
How do the bad fats block fat metabolism?
Because the mitochondria does not burn them because they have something about the bonds. So there's a certain type of bond called double bond that the power packs of our cell called the mitochondria that produce the energy in our cell, they cannot process that bond. So it doesn't get burned for energy. And if that is the main source of fat in our diet, then we don't have a lot of energy for these little fellers, these little mitochondria to produce. They just can't do their job. And in fact, they actually damage the mitochondria. They change the mitochondrial engineering. Mitochondria are engineering marvels. If you Google a video of how they work, there's like a little miniature molecular turbine in there that has to spin. And it's all based on the molecular formulation, and it comes from our diet. And if our diet doesn't have the same things that it used to have, it doesn't have the traditional foods that our genes still need, then our mitochondria they're not built properly and they can't function normally. And there's scientific studies now that are showing that the diets high in things like corn oil and soy oil, they make people lazy because their cells don't produce energy normally, so that when you compare like diets high in this stuff versus diets low in this stuff, you find that the people who are eating more of it don't exercise and they get fat. And they also feel it's because they're not exercising that they gain weight, it's because they feel hungry that they gain weight. And it's really very compelling science that is complicated. So, you know, even physicians don't quite understand it yet, and it's contrary to what we've been talking about for 50 years. So it's hard for doctors like myself to accept that what I learned in medical school wasn't correct. It wasn't all the information. It wasn't the whole story. There's a lot more.
Well, I certainly know that a lot of what we thought to be true about cholesterol and diet is no longer considered true. That we used to think that a lot of our serum cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol, was driven by what we ate and by reducing eggs and other cholesterol foods that would greatly, and we know that that's only true for a small percentage of the population, perhaps 10 or 15%, and most people's cholesterol, we make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another one I just read yesterday, which was interesting, is I always learned that excessive salt intake was bad. Now there was just a study, and I don't remember, you may have seen it, I've forgotten already where it's
Dr.
from.
Youssef had a video up on YouTube.
But it showed that except for a small percentage of people who were very sensitive to salt intake, most of us had lower mortality with the salt intake substantially above what was recommended by whoever recommends the feds. So I do understand some of the evanescence of nutritional information. We really don't understand nutrition. It really is evolving. But what, I guess to challenge you, what makes your structure any more stable over the long term or evidence-based than these other ones that have come and gone? And I think, as we said before, the American public feels whipsawed. One day you're told to eat eggs, then don't eat eggs. Don't have processed sugars, but it's eat just protein, eat just meat, don't eat meat, eat white meat, don't eat. It's very confusing to the average person, and I think it really reflects. And let me throw one out. Well, let me ask you that. Why do you think this idea of natural fats being good and any processed fats being necessarily harmful? They're not just bad, but they're harmful. Why do you think that will have staying power over time, as opposed to some of the other ideas that have come and gone?
Yeah, it's a very important question, because ours is the anti-fad. So we are just trying to codify what was always done for thousands of generations before, in the 1950s and 60s, when we started looking for the cause of heart attacks. So what I had learned in medical school was that that was at that time period where somebody came up with the idea that saturated fat was the cause of the heart attack epidemic that was killing men in their prime. Executives right here in New York, I think, was one of the hotbeds in the greater New York area. We're in Connecticut. And so, this one gentleman who was a researcher whose name is Ansel Keys, he had the idea that there was a dietary cause. But the reality is, and now we know this, was that at that time, the #1 cause of heart attack deaths was cigarette smoking. And it didn't have anything to do with diet. But he had ties to the processed food industry, and he was dead set on showing that butter and saturated fat and all the foods that people had been eating for generation after generation, he was dead set on showing that that was the problem.
And can I just stop you there, because we have to take a break, but we'll bring you right back to that point. I don't even know what Ansel Keys and his formulation, which I actually remember, not him specifically, but my neighbor was a cardiologist, and he started having his family avoid eggs, avoid bacon, avoid butter and milk. And I'm sure it was that influence. So we're going to be back in a couple of minutes, pick up the conversation right where we left off.
Don't go away.
Hi, we're back with Dr. Kate Shanahan, nutrition expert and physician, which is always fun to have together. So we're talking about Ansel Keys and this idea that came out in the 50s about not having saturated fats. Was that his primary?
Yeah, he was really down on those. And to a lot of folks it feels like, oh, we go back and forth and back and forth. But the fact is, we didn't do that until 1950. Before 1950, it was pretty standard, the same kind of traditional food, which we talk about, we describe in our book. What is it that all traditional diets have in common, no matter where you are in the world, no matter whether you're Italian or French or Japanese or what? And we felt that was just so essential to understand what that was. So we looked it up. We did a lot of research in that department.
And tell us a little bit more about, so you felt that the fats had a lot to do with that.
Yes.
And just to get back to some of the things we were talking about before, though, that obviously there was a lot going on in the middle of the 20th century in terms of cigarette smoking and people becoming less active. And how do you piece together the relative importance of nutrition with other lifestyle things that are important for people to pay attention to?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I'd say that it depends on the power of what we've changed. And so cigarette smoking has been, no one would argue now that that is unhealthy. But because what I've understood and what we mentioned earlier about this thing called oxidative stress, which is like, it is an aging process. Cigarettes are bad because they promote that. But vegetable oils, we consume them. They become our bodies. In massive quantities, we're consuming them now, 30 to 50% of our daily caloric intake. And we have this, while women have it while they're pregnant, they'll quit smoking, but they won't quit having deep fried French fries or potato chips and deep fried chicken and fast food and stuff like that, because we don't tell them
that stuff.
We don't tell them to do that. And babies are weaned on instead of getting breast milk, they're getting formula that has these vegetable oils in them. So this is such a powerful. It's the most radical change that we have made. For a long time, there have been a sedentary class. For a long time, there has been, I just spoke to somebody in India who comes from that caste. And he said that his family was diabetic because his father was a doctor. And they were the first to incorporate this new dietary change. And all of his other sedentary family members didn't end up getting diabetes. So it's just, that was an anecdotal story, but it was powerful to him because he grew up with that.
But people will say fiber is a big difference. I remember Dennis Burke, and I heard him speak when he was
Yes.
still alive and way back when I was a medical student. Dennis Burke is famous for a lymphoma named after him, but he talked a lot about fiber and colon cancer and how the high fiber diet of the Africans protected them. So how do we know
Right.
it's these fats and not fiber or something else? Where you're focusing on the fats and the
Sure.
specific. How do we know that?
Well, there's a lot of different ways that I could answer that question. And I cover like 20 of them in the book. But I think possibly, maybe for just now, what I'd like to say is that we did not have these problems. We did not have such an epidemic of obesity, of cancer, of heart attacks.
Weren't that just a function of people living longer? We also had an average lifespan of 45 years or 40 years.
Well, we don't, yes and no. So who's living longer now? Because I'm not, I'm only 29. My grandmother is 100, but she was born in 1917. So she was born when they were eating butter, when they were eating eggs. And longevity is not my main proxy for health, actually, because what biology cares about is fertility. And if you look at our fertility, that's drastically declined. Longevity is a matter largely of luck. No one, if somebody gets struck by lightning when they're 42, no one says, well, it's his diet. That was bad luck, right? So longevity is not a good proxy. There's too many factors.
Well, we do know that
fertility.
Illnesses, chronic illnesses such as cancer, are related to your risk of all of them are related to how long you live. So if you're dying at 45,
Correct.
you don't live long enough to get colon cancer or lung cancer is probably smoking, but pick
Yes.
another one, pancreas.
But we're looking at the age of the incidence, and it's creeping down. It's more common now to have, breast cancer, and there was just an article that showed something about, children, type 2 diabetes is incredibly high.
Now I could go on and talk to you forever, but we have about 2 minutes left. So for someone who wants to follow this diet, which is not quite the paleo diet, but it's what we used to
Or
eat.
start.
What should they do? How should they be
How can
eating?
they
What should
begin?
I have for dinner tonight?
The most important meal of the day is breakfast, because breakfast is the most important meal of the day not to screw up. And we do if we eat a meal that's going to block our fat burn. And so the foods that are very high in carb and high in these nasty vegetable oils are the worst kind of foods. So just a traditional
Sounds like what
breakfast.
I have for breakfast. so toast and that spray fake butter would be the worst thing that you can eat, right?
So you can have
White
one
toast.
slice of toast, but you want to have a little bit more fat, and you get your protein later in the day. Breakfast is the best meal to focus on really just fat. So a lot of people just have, what I have is I have a coffee with a whole bunch of cream in it and milk, and it's very high quality. It comes from cows that were not fed grain. They were not feedlot cows. They were out in the pasture eating grass, and it's really delicious. And promotes fat burn so efficiently that I don't get hungry. I didn't have lunch today. I never almost have lunch. And I make it all the way till dinner. Because who has time to pack a healthy lunch every day? And I get like 45 to an hour of free minutes every day of productivity because I don't have to eat lunch. And then I just go home and somebody wonderful has been cooking a delicious, healthy dinner for me. So I just kind of stick with
So
2
could
meals.
you again give us an idea of what a healthy dinner is?
Yeah,
I
so
mean, in terms of fat.
dinner we do pretty
a nice
well
pork
with.
chop?
So, yeah, exactly. You can, and dinner we do pretty well with. We just don't load up on the starches. So, you know, pasta-based dinner is not so great. If you have just a little bit of pasta and a lot of sauce and a lot of vegetables,
Is that
you're
same
going to
as the
get plenty of
Mediterranean
nutrition.
diet? People talk about the Mediterranean
The
diet.
Mediterranean diet is actually a traditional diet. And so it is one of the many that we have to choose from. We could do Mediterranean traditional, we could do French traditional, well, that's sort of in the Mediterranean area. We could do Japanese traditional, sushi, extremely healthy, fermented foods, that's like kimchi and, well, if you're not Asian, more familiar is sauerkraut, traditionally fermented sauerkraut is extremely good for you. So you could do like a kielbasa with sauerkraut and some kind of, I don't know, steamed vegetable or roasted vegetable or something easy. I like to do one pot meals whenever possible. Slow cooked dinners are fantastic. Rotisserie chicken with vegetables. You just want to, basically meat and plenty of tasty natural fat, gravy when you can do it. And
See, I like, the more she talks, the more I
and
like it.
vegetables.
great
Unfortunately, we have
advice.
to break. I'm so sorry to have to cut this off, but thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much.
When we come back, we'll answer today's health question, and we're going to have Kate back to tell me what else I can eat, because it all sounds good.
But right now, let's take a look at some of the upcoming events sponsored by the Western Connecticut Health Network.
Okay, we're back, and this week's health question is, we're going to ask Kate to stay here. As a middle-aged adult, thank you, should I be taking a multivitamin? What do you think of multivitamins? I mean, things have sweat. That's another area people, I think, are spinning about.
Yeah, well, what I recommend is kind of a moderate multivitamin, right? Because if you're, so for me, my average caloric needs are 1,500 calories. There's no way I can get 100% of the RDA of all the vitamins. I need some help. And so I just get a multivitamin that has 100% of the RDA of as many vitamins as I possibly can find. And then there's this couple minerals that I supplement too. I've actually gone online and used a tool to figure out my habitual diet, what minerals am I chronically low in? And that's what I supplement to get me up to the 100%. I think we get into trouble when we do these, 3,000%.
And certainly there's been a lot of study, and none of them have been terribly compelling about taking multivitamins. Again,
Or even specific vitamins.
and vitamin E, which we all think is an antioxidant, the studies looking just at vitamin E have been discouraging.
Very
They've shown
disappointing.
worse outcomes.
Well, a lot of times, and people don't realize this, it's synthetic vitamin E. And so it's an enantiomer, and that means 50% of them are going to potentially oppose the effect of the actual vitamin E because they can bind the receptor, but they don't have the same shape, so they don't produce the same action.
So again, naturally occurring is better.
Yes, naturally occurring is better. So you get vitamin E from the natural fats, avocado oil, olive oil, peanut oil.
And the one thing, though, that calories are very highly concentrated in oil.
Yes.
I mean, you've got per gram, what is it, 2.5 times the number of calories. Doesn't that put you at risk by eating an oil-based diet?
This is why it's so important to actually be a fat burner, because your appetites are normalized. You don't want to eat all the time. And so you can stop eating when you've had enough. And that's sort of like a skill, a life skill that we've generally lost in this country, because what we had been focused on was, okay, fats are bad because they're too concentrated, and so if we want to eat a bigger pile of food, we don't want to have fat. But if your goal in life is not to eat big piles of food and to feel good and be healthy, then I would recommend not being afraid of actual oils and actual food.
And you're comfortable on 1,500 calories a day.
I am, yeah. I mean, that's, if I don't exercise, that's plenty for me. That's what the calculators say I need.
Yeah, no, I know. If you calculate the caloric requirement, way below what I would tend to eat a day. Andrew, you were going to say something.
Just following up the exercise, how important is exercise in fat burning?
It's absolutely a fantastic tool. So when you exercise, your body produces hormones that help you burn fat. Even if you're a bad fat burner at rest, you become a better fat burner the longer you exercise.
And I know that the effect of that continues beyond when you stop exercising as well. So your metabolism is revved up for several hours afterwards, in addition to the time you're there on the treadmill or whatever you're doing.
Your fat burning is. And so if you, like what the trainers unfortunately will tell you is you got to eat right away after you exercise. But if you do that, then you just, all those wonderful fat burning enzymes and everything that you got cranking, you just slam them to a halt. And you go back, you block your fat burn again. So it's good if you exercise to wait at least till you're hungry again. And if you can wait an hour or two, you really get a lot of fat burning benefits. You'll be burning more fat at rest if you if you just don't eat for an hour or two after exercising than you were before you exercised.
So we've got a minute and a half left or so. Folks at home want to take your advice and start tomorrow. So you buy your book. By the way, is that available on Amazon and other places?
Yeah, it's available everywhere, and also from my website, which is drkate.com.
That's okay, yeah, please plug your website. That's drcate.com?
Yes, dr.
Yeah, so this is available there. And what should people, what can I do tomorrow to start being a fat burner?
So tomorrow, if you have a habit of a high-carb, starchy breakfast, think about what you might enjoy that doesn't have carbs in it, that's not starchy.
You described just a cup of coffee with creamy cream.
So easy, yeah. Just plenty of cream, load up on the cream. Because if you have like 4 or 5 tablespoons of it, that's just 250 calories, which is still going to be less than the average size bowl of cereal.
How about eggs? Everybody eats eggs for breakfast?
That's fantastic. Eggs with butter, and maybe a little bacon, maybe some vegetables for some antioxidants and other vitamins. Whatever tastes good. Just not so much toast.
For dinner, providing things that are natural, you're saying?
Absolutely natural. If you make it yourself, you've got a leg up.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show today and telling us all about.
Yes, it's been a lot of fun. And next time I'll bring my boxing gloves and we can go at it.
Oh yeah, no, I'd love it. So if you at home might have a question you'd like to ask on Health Talk, or would like to comments about our discussion today, please contact Andrea via healthtalk@wchn.org.
We'd like to thank today's guest, Dr. Kate Shanahan, for coming on our show and helping us learn more about all your research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate. So come back next week. Bye-bye.